Live.
Live. We're on. We are live. Hi, everybody.
Yay!
Hi.
And there's Meredith. IW Gregorio, and thank you so much for coming in to hang out with us today. I wrote None of the Above, which is a book, which is Middlesex Meets Mean Girls. Becky Albertalli, say hi.
Hi.
Becky wrote Simon versus this Homo sapiens agenda, which is about you got mail with gay guys with good grammar. Fonda Lee, say hi.
Hey everyone.
Fonda wrote Zero Boxer, which is about zero gravity space boxing, and it's totally awesome. Marie Jaskulka, say
Hi.
hi. Marie wrote the Marble Notebook of, oh geez, I always forget the name. Marie, why don't you introduce your book, because I always forget the name.
My book is The Lost Marble Notebook of Forgotten Girl and Random Boy.
That's right. I was going to say like Random Girl and Forgotten Boy, whatever.
My favorite title ever. It's so good. Yeah.
Meredith Moore, hi. She wrote I Am Her Revenge, which is sort of self-explanatory. and then Stefanie Lyons wrote Dating Down. And say hi, Stephanie.
Hello.
So I guess we decided to do this group chat just to sort of allay, because Becky and I were talking about how awesome it'd be if we were all like in the same city so we could get together. And I know people who actually debuted together, like Robin Talley and Carolyn Richmond, they actually had they were launching in the same day in the same town, and they had their launch party together, and it just seems like the whole publishing process is so isolating. One of the greatest things about the 15ers is that it's brought us all together. So we just really wanted to have this be a support group in some ways, and just a way for us to chat with other people who actually know what we're going through. So I guess we're going to start off just by talking about what our greatest fears of this first day is, since we are a fearless group, supposedly, but we also have a lot of fears. And my fear is just that, no one's going to know, and it's just going to be another bump in the road.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably everybody's fear.
Yeah, that was totally my fear too. I had it all planned. I was going to talk about it, so now I guess I'm going to have to think of another fear.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe flip it on its head and say your greatest fear is being on the Best Times bestseller list.
I can imagine the pressure.
Yeah.
I can imagine the pressure if I was a New York Times bestseller.
I mean, how could I go buy a gallon of milk at the grocery store? It would be embarrassing.
I think it's funny too because we put so much like emphasis on the release date, and it kind of happens, but the actual process, it's so long, and I don't know about you guys, but like people who pre-ordered my book got it days ago or even a week ago, and who knows when other bookstores will pick it up. So I think maybe in our minds we have this expectation that like something will change on release date when really kind of nothing really changes. And you're just sort of, okay, back to work as normal, and now there's a book out in the world with your name on it.
Yeah, I've heard from other debut authors that like after you just send it out into the world, there's nothing much you can do. So it's nice after release day when it's just out there. And
Yeah.
No, I was just talking to someone who just said that yesterday was the worst, and then today's a little bit better, and then every day from now on is better, because it's like this huge burden has been lifted. This huge artificial burden, and self-imposed, of course.
Well, Stephanie and I release tomorrow, but everyone thinks that we're today, so pretty much already done. Like, I mean, our release day is going to be like.
I know.
Well, and also because it came out a week early and everybody started, talking about it, it was just sort of like a spontaneous release day without our knowledge, and now. So we're going to be seasoned pros by tomorrow when our.
Yeah, tomorrow I'm just going to, I don't know, like. Get a massage and take a walk or something. It's done. It's all done.
That's what I wanted to do today, definitely. A massage.
I think one thing that I'm afraid of is, like there's definitely a sense that a lot of people have been reading it all along, like with the arcs and stuff, but now is finally the time when people I knew from high school, my book has a lot of my high school experiences, and people like outside of the writing community will be reading it. That is really freaking terrifying. I did not realize that would be so anxiety provoking for me. But that's definitely on my mind today.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I'd say one of the anxieties is that no one is reading it. Like, you hear all these people like, I'm so excited for your book, like, I can't wait to get a hold of it, read it. And then, of course, when you fall off the wagon and you check Goodreads, you're like, wait, nobody's reading it. Like, no, there's no all these people who say they're reading it, they're not reading it. So on one hand, you're like, oh, gosh, like, I'm worried people are reading it, and then you're worried people aren't reading it.
No, it's just that people don't know what Goodreads is. Like, it's amazing. You know, when I first announced my book, I was like, oh, yeah, you can add it on Goodreads. And everyone was like, huh? What's Goodreads? and, like, people were trying to order it on Goodreads. Like, they just didn't understand what it was. So it just shows
that's actually really comforting to me.
Me too, yeah.
I'm really glad most people are not on Goodreads.
Yeah, that's so true.
I'm like, oh, good, I don't have to deal with Goodreads then.
Yeah, that's very true. Oh, Goodreads.
I have a bunch of questions for each of you, individualized questions. And so I know that Becky already knows hers. I already asked her yesterday, gave her a heads up, but you can still think about it and you can change your answer because I know that there's some very exciting new developments. What is your favorite Oreo? And I actually took a picture of some spring Oreos for you that I should post online. They have these like this yellow filling in it, and I almost sent it to you for a really big gift, but I'm lame, so I didn't.
Yeah. No. First of all, I am a fan of the spring Oreos. I like anything that's like a regular Oreo but with food coloring. That's fine by me. I did prepare for this question today. Actually, can I like eat an Oreo right now? Like, I feel like that's my contribution to this.
And that's torment us by like eating Oreos in front of us.
Yeah.
Search, right?
What I really want to know, though, is whether you have finalized your sponsorship with Nabisco yet.
Literally the dream. Like, that is all I want from this book, is for Nabisco to contact me. They can pay me in money or they can pay me in Oreos. It will all go to the same place anyway. Yeah, that's what I'm going for. So this is a double stuff dipped in milk in an this is an Oreo mug given to Jasmine Warga, the author of My Heart and Other Holes.
Yeah. That's great. All right, and so let's go to Meredith yesterday because I already cued you in on this question, but you evaded it, so I'm going to ask it again. Who would you want to take revenge on?
Okay, so I actually think
if you want to give some context of your books, if you want. If you want to start off by giving some context from your book.
Sure. So Vivian, my main character, is raised by her mother to exact revenge on her behalf, and she's sent to a boarding school in England to seduce the son of the man who broke her mother's heart. So she's been raised as this heartless weapon, and she's going to get revenge. I actually think the best revenge is that old saying, like, the best revenge is a life well lived. And so there are definitely, like, some people, I don't need revenge on them, but I'm very happy that, like, I have a book coming out, and I'm in a good place in my life, and I think that's just the way to handle revenge situations, and not raise a girl to go break the heart of a son.
That is an extremely political politic and well thought. Which I don't believe in a second, but which I will. So Marie and Steph, do you guys want to talk about poetry and why you guys chose to write in verse, and like what the role of poetry and journaling was when you were a teenager?
Sure. Stephanie, do you want to go first? You want me to take it?
I guess I didn't really know that I was writing in verse when I started. I just heard this voice coming out, and it was really choppy, and I was getting rid of a lot of the in-between words. And I was getting my master's at the time, and I submitted it, and my advisor said, this is a verse novel. Keep going, it sounds great, but this is a verse novel. And so I was like, okay, what is a verse novel? But I mean, as a kid, I wrote poems all the time. I wrote really bad poems that I'm probably going to post on my website now because I still have those, and it's very fun to look at some of the really stupid things I wrote poems about. That I think more so than the craft itself, but the topic. As a kid, I kind of loved some of my dumb topics. But why I ended up, I think the other thing for me was it just felt more emotional. It felt more emotional not to have any rules and not to feel like I had to form paragraphs and I could just stop in the middle of the page and leave all that white space, because I felt like it was a very, like the main character is in a very empty relationship, and so I think that to me felt right for her. That's my take.
And Marie, you also were in a master's program, right?
Yeah, I have my MFA from the University of Alaska.
Okay.
Fun.
Yep. And I chose to write poetry because I was having a hard time turning things in with my beta writers, and they said, have you ever tried writing a novel in verse? Because they read some of my poetry, which is what I handed in one week when I didn't have any novel pages to stand in. And I said, yeah, I thought about it a million times, but I didn't know that people still did those and published those. So they were like, well, why don't you try that? And I did, and I told them, it was like somebody said, why don't you try writing in English for a change? Like everything just, it was so easy to write, and it just felt like, oh, why have I not done this before? So I don't even know if I am a verse novelist, what the next book will be, but it was the first one I wrote that was verse, and it was the first one that got published, so that's telling me something about it. Maybe people do still read and publish verse novels.
Definitely, and still published. Like this year, so Holly Bodger's 5 to 1 is in verse, and Cordelia Jensen's Skyscraping is in verse. Am I missing another one? I mean, there's like middle grade. I mean, obviously Jacqueline Woodson, and Amy Sonichin or A.L. Sonichin, Red Butterfly is also in verse. So clearly.
I'm amazed. I mean, the idea of writing a novel in verse. I mean, writing a novel is so hard, but like. Guys' brains must work differently, because to me the idea of writing a novel in verse would be like terrifying. Like, I don't even know where I would begin. Wow.
Well, I think like Stefanie said, it's so nice to be able to use that white space to be able to sort of tell the story. With fiction, I do feel sometimes when I'm writing it like I'm over-explaining. I'm saying a lot, so.
I feel like, I mean, and this is random, but I almost feel like a lot of librarians and literary readers prefer verse because of that, because there's so much more left to the imagination, and it's also really good for reluctant readers too. You know, kids love I think that one of the great things about Ellen Hopkins' books is that a lot of kids were like, oh, this is a really thick book, but then they could read it in a few hours.
Yeah.
And that gave them a sense of achievement, kind of like those little Bob books that kids have, you know, with like that they read in the beginning. But they're really good for reluctant readers.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I thought that it fits really well with like so much of what the teens are saying back and forth to each other are sort of like almost tweets or Facebook posts. They're just short and go back and forth. So I thought that poetry really worked well to sort of capture that quick dialogue.
Yeah. All right, so Fonda, you get to talk about zero gravity space boxing and how your martial arts experience informed your book. And I've been meaning to ask you this for a long time.
Yeah, so Zero Boxer kind of came together from a few different inspirations. So I was working in corporate strategy at Nike at the time, and I kind of had a first-hand glimpse into how much money and emotion and investment goes into creating celebrity athletes. And despite having worked in the athletics industry, the only sport that I really am enthusiastic about are combat sports, being a martial artist and having had that background. So I started kind of envisioning this character who would be a futuristic prize fighter who ends up representing not just kind of like a city or a team or a country, but an entire planet in some distant future. And that's kind of how it came together. And once I kind of hit upon the idea of, well, it's going to be about a story about an athlete and it's going to be in the future, well, what would be different about combat sports in the future? Well, obviously it would be in zero gravity. So then I was like, and then at that point it kind of all sort of fell into place, and it was really fun. It was just so much fun to be like, oh, I'm gonna try and think about how this move would work in space, but like it wouldn't, because like the guy would float away, but then he'd bounce off the wall. But like this chokehold would work, but this one wouldn't work because like you don't have any leverage. Like so, it ended up being not just fun from like the standpoint of writing a novel, but fun in like geeking out over the idea.
Yeah. I've got to ask, did you have like a physicist vet your work? Because like you kind of would have to know how things would work in that situation in that zero gravity. I mean, like.
How? Sorry, what was that? How would?
Did you have a physicist vet your work?
Oh, did I have a physicist? No, my book is completely unvetted by science.
Oh!
I make that clear at this point. So I'm gonna get somebody who is gonna give me a 1-star on Amazon. Who's gonna be like, I have been in space. I got into this fight with this guy in space, and this is not how it worked. So this was very much. However, I did do some research into how you would fight in water. So apparently, there's like lifeguards, for example, and like guys in the military and stuff. There are some techniques for how you would like hold someone or fight in water, which is kind of analogous to space in that you don't have as much of leverage, and you're kind of like it's sort of a somewhat weightless environment. So there was that analogy. But then otherwise, I spent a lot of time watching YouTube videos of astronauts, and I watched stuff like how do you brush your teeth in space, like how do you eat in space, how do you dry your hair in space, and all these things. So I could kind of like envision, if they were doing some activity in space, how would that work? So it was and I watched a ton of MMA fights. So it was kind of like I took, have some background in martial arts, watching a lot of MMA fights and watching a lot of astronaut videos, and kind of like mashed it together.
Yeah, I loved all that stuff, and then also how you add in the marketing stuff, because that's a world that I'm not familiar with at all, and it gave me a different perspective on sports and on sort of the idea of athlete as celebrity. It was really cool.
Yeah, there's actually sort of a moment that I remember when I was working in the industry that so I was working on a campaign for LeBron James. So I was in this meeting with LeBron James, who was, I think at the time, like 22 years old. And, he's in this room, and there's all these, and Eileen, you've read my book, so you will recognize kind of the scene that was inspired by it. So there's this young guy, and he's in this conference room, and he's surrounded by, like, people in suits, the corporate guys, and his retinue, his entourage is there, and he'd asked for like voodoo donuts, which are like the donuts in Portland, so there were like donuts there. And he's sort of sitting there, and all these like corporate people are like showing him stuff like, this is the marketing plan for you, and this is how we're going to grow the business, and like here's like the signature shoe. And I was thinking to myself at the time, like it was a cool experience, but like, wow, this guy is like 22 years old, and to have this much attention on him, this much pressure. And that kind of was a moment that sort of stuck with me, and it found its way into the book in a way.
Yeah. Very cool. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about the writing process and do the typical like advice to writers type of thing? I mean, and Steph, do you want to talk about it so you got your MFA? And can you talk a little bit about your program and
Sure.
how you think it helped you in your path to publication?
Well, I mean, I went to Vermont College of Fine Arts and got my MFA there, and it was 2 years where it was just like magical. You could do whatever you wanted, and you could play, and you didn't feel the pressure of, I've got to get this thing done, I've got to send it out, I've got to sell it. It was more like just spending time absorbing and learning, and that, I think those 2 years were just like the best possible time I could have had writing. And I think because of that, because I spent those 2 years listening and learning and absorbing, it allowed me, like, I never would have come up with that voice if I had spent the time playing. I think I would have been working really hard to come up with a new concept in my head and to spit it out. So I love, because I'm a very driven person, I loved that I basically gave myself 2 years off. And in those 2 years, having those 2 years off, it kind of deepened my, just my understanding and my voice. And I also didn't beat myself up about, like, getting things done and getting out there. So that I really loved. I also met a lot of really awesome authors and writers, and you know, like, just in workshops and things like that, I got to see things that were workshopped that are now, you know, making their way into the world, which is really cool. But I don't know what else. What was the rest of the question?
Oh, no. Advice, I guess.
It was what?
Advice to aspiring writers.
Well, I guess I'm a big believer. I guess it depends on, when I was younger, I wrote a lot, and I threw away my journals, which makes me so sad. So write a lot, yourself a lot, and don't throw it away. Don't be ashamed of what you do. But also, I'm also a big believer in living and getting out there and having experiences, because I think that deeply shapes your voice and your where you go from there in your writing career. So I don't think you can sit at home and just read and write all the time. You're not gonna deepen your experiences, and therefore you're not gonna really enrich your voice. But also, there's something to be said for just writing a lot. So all of those things. My advice to writers: read a lot, write a lot, and go live a lot. Sleep every now and then, I guess. That's the only thing I can do.
Speaking of which, I'm going to tweet right now and tell people to call in with questions.
Is there a way we can ask people to ask questions? Will it just show up on the screen if they do?
Supposedly. I'm trying to think. I'm looking at our thing right now. I think that people might not know how to ask questions, so I'm looking at the thing. And sometimes people put questions in the comments, but there should be a way. All right.
Well, just while you're doing that, to go back to the earlier question of what advice we would give young writers, I think the best thing for me was finding stuff that I'm passionate about and kind of finding what I'm a nerd about. And so I kind of, in high school, I read a lot of 19th century British literature, like, over and over and over, and that's something that's really heavily influenced my writing, and it's something I wanted to bring into my own books. So I think just finding what makes you excited, every little quirky thing about you can use in your writing.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you know, I get asked a lot. I'm a clinical psychologist, so I get asked if that impacted my work in any way, and I think it did, but in a different way than people think, because I never use any of my clients' stories or anything confidential. But what was really helpful for me was just having the opportunity to listen to how teenagers speak. And for me, I even had to, like, write it down as notes for supervision when I was in training. And I think that helped me so much with dialogue. Like, I would recommend, like, this is kind of shady, but, like, not only eavesdrop on everybody, but, like, write it down too, and make sure you write down just, like, the rhythms of the conversations, and not just, like, the content, but just, you know, the pauses, and you know, just the way people talk when they know each other well versus don't know each other well, or when they're kind of hiding something or kind of reluctant to talk about something. That, for me, that was really, I think, the most helpful kind of place where I could pull from my psych background into my writing.
Oh, click the little grid at top right and choose QYA. Oh, I think that someone put a question up.
Oh.
Showing how people could ask questions.
It looks like we have a question that's popped up.
Yeah, it says, click the little grid.
Surprising.
Hey, is it working? I'd like to know how each of the authors comes up with character names. Yay! So let's answer that. Okay. So, I'm I'm actually the worst person to answer this question because I always like think of character names and then realize that it's someone I know, and then I have to change it. So I just like I've done the phone book. They're also I'm sorry.
So I have an answer to coming up with character names. So I write science fiction and fantasy. So character names are often interesting because they can kind of be anything, but at the same time there has to be a logic to them. So they have to make sense, within the context of that world that you're trying to build, but the sky's kind of the limit in terms of what you can name a character as long as it's pronounceable. So in Zero Boxer, I came up with the names by imagining that they were names that existed today that would have evolved or permutated like centuries into the future. So my main character's name is Carr, and I liked it because it sounds kind of like Carl, or like names that are similar to names that exist today, but you can imagine them changing. And one of my character's names is Paul, but it's spelled P-O-L instead of what we would think of Paul, P-A-U-L today. And so I sort of took names that exist today and just like the same way, a lot of the names that we have today are old names from centuries before, but they're now spelled differently or are completely different than they were centuries ago. So that was one avenue I took. But then also you see random stuff, like random words or random names in your day-to-day life, and sometimes I'll just see someone's name or see a word and be like, that would make a great character. And I'll jot it down, and then it'll come back up again. So my main character, Carr, I actually saw on a license plate because it's like an auto body shop somewhere in Portland, and I was like, that would make a great character name. And I just kind of filed that in the back of my head, and it came up later when I wrote the book.
Yeah, I use baby name websites a lot as well because they're great. They'll show you like what the name means and what language it comes from. And then this book, I used a lot of Arthurian names because the King Arthur legends actually play a bit of a part in the story and in the backgrounds. And so Vivian is the name of one of the names of the woman who trapped Merlin in a tree. And so it's kind of that strong female character name that I wanted to give her.
I love naming. I think it's so much fun. I get so excited about names, but for me, it's well, my main character Samantha is just basically I always wanted to be called Samantha, so it was my way of becoming Samantha. I don't know. I think I write a lot of wrongs with my names. And then the piece I'm working on now is a period piece, so I go back into the 100 best. There's like you can Google the 100 best names of 1938, and it'll give. I think it's actually 1,000 best names or something. It's a huge long list, and then I make little notes and keep those names because some of them sound juicy, or a character pops up right away when you hear a name, or then I name a plant because I have a collection of plants at the house. So when there's a name that I'm not going to be able to get to for years in a character, it goes to one of my plants.
Yeah, I would say almost all my characters are just named names that I like that I'm for some reason not able to use for my own children. One reason is because I don't want to have infinite numbers of children. I get myself into trouble. So my main character is Simon, and I love the name Simon. And I had I wrote the book when my older son was about a year old. And we were like going back and forth between the two names. Like he could have been named Simon, and then I wrote the book. Then I had another son. So Simon actually stole the name from my younger son, who is yeah. But I'm pretty happy with his name, and it very much suits him.
Cool. So the next question is what surprising avenues did you find to market your book? And that's from Parker Peavyhouse. So I guess
Fearless 15 is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
In helping out.
Hello.
Oh. My computer is slowing down, I think because I need battery. Hold on for 1 second, okay, guys? I'll be right back.
We'll talk about surprising avenues for marketing your books. I think I was actually sort of surprised that I mean, not really surprised. This shouldn't be surprising, but we hear it often, and maybe we don't really internalize it, that so much of your book is just word of mouth. And I was surprised that random people in my life that I never thought would be interested in boxing or science fiction or even, I don't know, reading, were coming up to me and saying like, oh, I didn't even know you write science fiction, like I like science fiction, blah blah blah. And this might be like a coworker that I'd like worked with, and I maybe knew the names of his kids, but that had just never been something that had kind of come up. So it's interesting to, I guess, now be publicly doing something that most day job people don't do, because you find out random people in your life who are now interested or connected to your book in some way.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, my turn to have technical difficulties. The plug there doesn't work. But one of the neat, and Becky might have experience with this, one of the really neat ways to reach out to communities that I found because of the topic of my book was to reach out to intersex communities and also to healthcare providers. And I went to a couple of conferences. I went to one conference where I actually met an endocrinologist who works at this clinic for gender nonconforming and intersex kids, and they were talking about really neat opportunities to like not only share the book with them, but it got me thinking, oh, there should be like this little care package for LGBTQ kids that clinics should be able to get, like almost like a junior library guild like package. And I know that there's, we've had talks to going back, like I'm going to go back to my medical school, for instance, to do a lecture there, and as well as a reading, and to Stanford, where I did my residency, because they have a pretty strong medicine and humanities program. And so those are sort of cool, out-of-the-box ways for people to hear about my book. It's still not plugged in. Sorry.
All right, so anyone else watching, any other questions? I'm looking at the little Q&A screen.
I know. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to look at the Q&A screen. Oh, cool.
I'm so preoccupied with like the fact that my this computer is not charging.
I have a question for everyone. How are you guys celebrating your book release?
Well, that's a good one.
Which party plans? Are you like hanging out with just family members? Like, what are you doing?
I actually did my launch party this weekend. The bookstore got special permission to sell the books early, which is really sweet.
Really nice.
That was a room full of family and friends, which was great. And then I think today my friends and I are going to go to bookstores and hunt the book down, which will be exciting.
Oh, that's really fun.
I haven't seen it like on the shelf yet.
That's great. That's a great idea. I need to do that.
Yeah, I'm doing today. My sister actually like scoped it out for me to make sure, because I'd be really bummed if I like drove there and it wasn't up yet. The Barnes & Noble in my hometown, Sandy Springs, which is also Simon's hometown, even though I renamed it. Actually, well, apparently is going to have my book today, so she and I are going to like head out there in an hour or two. And take a picture if they do. I'll believe it when I see it. I think I can't imagine it being on the shelf there or anywhere, so it doesn't quite feel real yet, but hopefully once we get there it'll be like super real.
Yeah, I'm going out to dinner tonight and hitting a Barnes & Noble first to see if it's there, and then I intend to give it better placement wherever I do find it.
Oh no.
I had one of my friends the other day find my book in a bookstore. Well, obviously before launch date, because apparently the street release date means nothing. But she found it, and then she tweeted me a picture of her turning it to face us.
I've heard such varying things about that. I've heard from certain booksellers that they don't like that.
I'm sure they do not.
The last thing I want them to do is watch this book because someone did that,
Okay, it looks like we're getting a whole bunch of questions.
No.
Oh, Curtis!
Michelle's question. Michelle Salkoff's asking, Becky, how could this book come out over Passover when I can't eat Oreos?
I think the answer to that is that I am a terrible Jew. As you saw, as I demonstrated, I just ate an Oreo on screen, and I'm Jewish. I'm 100% Jewish. It is 100% Passover. So I think it's a test of your faith, and I failed.
That's really cool.
You're doing it for the art. That's what you're gonna say. You're like, it's
I'm doing it for the art. Yeah, I'll eat an extra one for you though. I'll eat a lot of extra ones for you.
All right, Jen Marine Thorne asked, whose book is The Wrong Side of Right, which came out a few weeks ago, and it's fabulous.
So good.
What are each of you working on next?
So I turned in book 2 revisions to my editor last Monday. So I'm working on a book about a girl who goes to Scotland because I can't get enough of the UK apparently, and she goes to work as an au pair at a Scottish castle, and strange things start to happen around the castle. So it's another thriller for YA.
And Becky, you just turned in a book 2? Becky, you just turned in a book 2?
Oh yeah, I don't want to talk. I don't want to. My deadline for book 2 has passed. I'll put it that way.
Okay, never mind.
Well, I'm learning that just because you sold one book does not mean it is any easier the second time around. Actually, it's even harder to write the second book.
Yeah.
So much harder.
The second book. I mean, my book was a 1-book deal, so the second book is it's like the whole thing over again. You gotta go sub. So I've got another YA sci-fi, and I'm working on an adult fantasy as well, and hopefully making some progress on that. I've discovered it gets very challenging to juggle having a book coming out and being super excited about it, plus dealing with the gamut of rejection from submission, plus writing a third book. I mean, it used to be that we just write in our little caves and didn't have to worry quite so much about other stuff going on around us, and now it's 3 tracks of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, so totally.
Well, I'm doing something that has nothing to do with verse or I'm writing historical fiction now, so I don't know. I guess it's sort of like the names. You see one, you feel moved. You come up with an idea, you feel moved. I'm not going to be one of those people, I think, that works on the same thing over and over again, which I would like to, because I feel like it would give me a kind of like a theme, or people would know, oh, she writes that kind of thing, but I think they're going to see my name and be like, who knows what this is going to be about, because she never does anything that's around. But I get bored. I mean, it's easy to move on to the next thing when you've spent 2 years doing, something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to have something completely different after you've been totally immersed in one thing.
Yeah.
I have recently started working at a children's book publisher in the managing editor. So,
wow.
Very cool.
I have fallen in love with picture books. So I'm working on a couple picture books right now. Helps to have a 4-year-old at home too.
Yeah.
But I'm also working on another novel in verse and another straight up YA novel. And then when one takes over, I usually just work on whatever has sort of taken over my mind. So I'm sure one will sort of rise to the top, and that'll be my next project.
Cool. So the next question is from Alexis Bass, author of the wonderful Love and Other Theories. Her question is, what's been the most challenging part about debuting, and what have you enjoyed the most?
I think the wait has been fairly challenging. I'm not alone in this. Selling the book a year and a half before it actually comes out, and there are a lot of reasons for that that make a lot of sense. But it's also like you're kind of on pins and needles for a very long time. But I think what I've enjoyed the most is the community that you find with it, the Fearless 15ers, and just the Twitter YA community has been so supportive and encouraging, and that makes it a lot less stressful.
Absolutely.
I completely agree.
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things about debuting is, this is, and it's, I don't know how, I guess I would call it the comparison devil of, every journey is so different when it comes to publication, and I came from a background that was very, I guess, structured. You go to school, you get good grades, you graduate, you get a job. I had a job that was very kind of linear in that every year you get reviewed and you get, a certain percentage raise, and after so many years you're up for promotion. And switching to a career that is, very fluid in the sense that, like, people are all over the map. I mean, you have people who are, years ahead of you, who have been writing for 10 years and suddenly they have a bestseller, or people who have, they hit it right out of the gate, but then maybe they take a break, or or some people take like super long time to get published. Some people do it very quickly. Some people are writing a book every 4 years. Some people are writing a book every 6 months. So there's so many ways for this journey to occur, and we're all debuting authors together, but at the same time you are always like wondering, like, God, should I be doing something differently? Like, should I be in a different place than I am? Like, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? So that has been, I think, a little challenging to like just figure out how you navigate doing this thing. But I'll echo the sentiment that, like, you also there's more community to it than I thought there would be. Like, I kind of thought I always thought being a writer would be kind of like a lonely thing, and it's not at all. Like, I feel, way more connected to fellow writers than I think I ever did to, people that I worked next to, honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think for me, absolutely, both of everything that you said, you and Meredith said, sort of speaks to my experience, and also the joys of being part of this community. It's been, it's a second family, and it's a tribe, really. That's what I think Kate Mesner always used to say whenever she went to an SCBWI conference. So the next question is, can you talk about any about difficulties during the editing process? So I could answer this. I wouldn't say that I had difficulties during the editing process, but there definitely were times when my editor saw a problem and made this suggestion here, but I sort of had to find a way in between. That wasn't exactly what she wanted me to do, but that solved the problem. And that sort of was the most interesting part of the editorial process, was when knowing that when my editor made a comment or made a suggestion, that there was something underlying a problem that I could fix, and I could fix using her way, or that I could fix in the way that I felt would be best for the story. That was the most interesting thing for me.
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was surprised by how difficult the copy editing process was. I kind of thought that once you got through like the heavy lifting, that like copy editing would be breeze. It's like, oh, fixing typos. But it was actually really hard, because at that point you've read your book something like, countless times. And even the forest for the trees. You're looking at your manuscript and you're like, I have no idea if this is good or bad. Like, it's just nonsense. It's like I've said my own name 3,000 times. I can't even tell. So I was really surprised. Like, copy editing was so hard.
Yeah, I think reading the manuscript so many times, it gets to you. after a while. I can go back and read it again now because it's been a while, but like after a few rounds of things, I just couldn't tell what was good anymore.
Yeah, being able to tell whether or not it's any good is scary.
Yeah. I also I don't know if any of you ran into this, but I occasionally felt like there were things that I had to do in revision in order to not necessarily serve the story, but make the book fit into a certain category or like fit expectations for what it was supposed to be. So specifically, my book kind of it straddles that like YA to adult line. And when it was picked up by a YA imprint. So some of the edits that I was making were specifically trying to like make it be a little bit more YA. And those were, I mean, they went fine, and I think my editor was very good about making sure we preserved the feel of that novel, and I'm very happy with how it turned out in the end. But there were things I think that that when you're writing it for the first time, you're not really thinking so much about the audience as trying to get the story that's inside you out, and then later you have to go through the process of having outside eyes on it who say like, well, we want to do this to appease buyers. So for example, my main character started out, and my original manuscript was 18 and aged up to 20, and my editor said, you can't have a 20-year-old in a YA novel. So we need to age him down and start him at 17. And so there were some things I had to do that like just messed with the timeline of my novel, and that I felt like they weren't really fundamentally changing the story, but they were like appeasing buyers, and he was like explicitly like, this is to appease buyers, like he actually said that. So that was something that was interesting to have to deal with during revision.
Cool. Then the last question is, do you listen to music while you write? I do not.
I do. I'm obsessed with music. Actually, I built a playlist for I Am Her Revenge that I need to tell people about, but I love just listening to angsty music to kind of get me in the mood for what I'm writing, and I respond pretty well to it.
I've made a soundtrack too, and I'm sorry, Stephanie, but I made a soundtrack too, and I loved listening to it in the car in between when I was like thinking about what I was going to write. But I don't play anything while I'm working. I really need just like, if anything, maybe classical, maybe something with no words, but anything with words sort of distracts me from what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same way. Like I can listen to stuff that's maybe sort of like in the background. It actually sort of depends on what else is going on. Like if my kids are screaming in the background or something, then I might like put on like the noise canceling headphones and like some background music. But most of the time I'm like one of those like listen to like silence, like complete silence writers. But I will listen to some if it's like blocking out other things.
I love music. Music completely changed the game for me because I used to write to silence. I needed total silence. And then I think it was when I was in Vermont and I was sharing a room with another writer, and she listened to music, and she was, big into creating little playlists for her story. And so I gave it a try, and I think it hugely informs what I'm working on now. I love it. In fact, I do the same thing that you do, Marie, where I'll listen to the music, I'll create a track or a playlist, and then I'll listen to it when I'm not writing. And that's actually helped scenes, too, because I've been on the elliptical listening to a song and hearing the lyrics. And there was, I remember one time, like the word, there was some word about, like, bang or something, and it was something about, like, guns. And I was working on the plot I'm working on now, and I was like, of course that person has to die. Like, it was just so stupid. Like, listening to, I had to get off the elliptical and write that down. It was like obvious. So
wow. True inspiration. Well, so we've been at this for 50 minutes, ladies. So thank you guys for watching. I guess we can go through one more time and mention our titles and a short blurb to remind people who we are. And so I'm I.W. Gregorio, and I wrote None of the Above, which is Middlesex Meets Mean Girls, and thank you for joining us. Becky?
I am Becky Albertalli, and my book is Simon versus the Homo sapiens Agenda. And so I guess the pitch is like, gay. You've Got Mail, starring gay teenage boys.
Marie?
Hi, I am Marie Jaskulka, and my book is The Lost Marble Notebook of Forgotten Girl and Random Boy, and it is about two young poets in first love.
And Fonda?
I'm Fonda Lee. I'm the author of Zero Boxer, which comes out tomorrow. And it's pitched as Rocky meets Gattaca. It's about a futuristic prize fighter fighting in zero gravity combat and interplanetary conflict between Earth and Mars.
And Stefanie?
And I'm Stefanie Lyons, and I wrote Dating Down, and it comes out tomorrow as well. And it is a verse novel about a girl who meets a boy who's not so good, and her downward spiral while her father's political career rises.
The Meredith.
Hi, I'm Meredith Moore, and my book is I Am Her Revenge, and it's about a manipulative girl and an innocent boy out on the English moors.
Well, thank you, viewers, for coming in. I think that we're going to chat a little bit afterwards, but in our little private session. So it's the end of this broadcast. Thanks for coming in to this.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Hangover. I don't even know what to call it.